Mark Bethune?
Well, I went to Central High School and I met Mark Bethune when he was in Central High School, and at that point we were just becoming aware of what was taking place around the country as far as becoming black aware, wanting to learn more about the history of African people and looking at the atrocity that was taking place in regards to African people. And we decided, we sort of clicked and we started going to the African study classes that were in the school. Once a week in the evening. And then from that, we started to branch out, and we met a brother who was working with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and got involved in working with SNCC here locally in the city of Detroit. And that opened up the doors for us to be in touch and with a number of people who were political activists who had had many of years of movement experience. And that sort of opened the doors up for both of us to become activists during the time.
Okay, well, what kind of person was Mark Bethune? What kind of background did he come
Well, Mark came from as far as they have his sister put out a book dealing with the whole question of trying to explain his background. He basically had a background where he was moved from one family to another. Had a hard situation in regards to that. He was a struggling brother who was trying to find himself. I think the question of becoming an activist was very important for him because it helped him to stabilize his life. And he was a brother that was very, very sincere in that of concern about the future of African people in this country. And based on that, that's the reason why some of the things that took place that we'll be dealing with later on took place. His concern about the drugs taking over the African community, the whole question about the kind of struggles that's taking place between male and females, and the need to stop the kind of brutality that was taking place, the type of rapes that were taking place of African women. He was opposed to that and fairly strongly felt that we needed to save our children.
from? Okay, could you give us the kind of context that Mark was growing up in? What was happening in the struggle, and what was happening here in Detroit in the struggle?
Well, here in the city of Detroit, we have to recognize back in the latter part of the '60s when I got involved in the movement and met Mark and we got involved. SNCC had already moved to a certain level of going through various struggles in that of organizing people in the South to vote, raising the whole question about blacks being independent. When we talk about here at the North, we were entering into a period of time of the rebellions. We had the '67 rebellion, the '68 rebellion after the assassination of Martin Luther King. People was raising the whole question of being more militant. You had the rise of the RNA. You had the various groups around the country, the Black Panther Party emerging with SNCC. You had the Republic of New Africa. So there was a real militant sort of sitting that was taking place all over the country, which we were blessed to come into the movement during that period of time. You had situations all over the country where the police brutality was being unleashed on African activists. You had the question about the FBI also unleashing its forces in Interpol situations where they were intimidating African people, anyone that was sympathetic with the African cause. And you also had the rise of the Vietnam anti-Vietnam struggles taking place. So it was sort of that sort of sitting that we came into existence. You had the community being flooded by drugs, and you had the whole question of African people just trying to survive in a situation inside this country where one could not be that successful. We had a new level of enslavement in this country to work in somebody's plant.
Okay, in the midst of that, you mentioned the Black Student Association at Central High. Can you name some of the people that came out of that Black Student Association?
Well, offhand, I would have to think back about that. It was a number that I remember. Joanne Watson came out of Central, and she probably attended some of those meetings. I don't remember her as being part of that. Wendell Anthony also graduated from Central and attended those meetings periodically. I remember Charles Anderson was one of the teachers who were the coordinator of the particular program, and there was other teachers that at this point played a tremendous role in regards to coordinating the program and assisted with it. one of the teachers is now the principal of Central High School at this point, and unfortunately at this moment I can't think of his name.
Okay, so just for the sake of clarity, when we talk about Mark, we're not speaking of an individual that was just racist or just full of rage or anything, but just the person who wants to make changes for the better.
Yeah, we talking about someone who wasn't racist, and one of the things that we try to explain to people is that African people in this country cannot be racist because the whole concept of racism inside any institution means that you have a power base, an institutionalized power base, to carry out the particular systematic subjugation of a particular race, which African people in the country of America have no such power base. What Mark was a person that was concerned about the particular direction African people was going in, and recognized that racism in this country was the key reason, that as well as capitalism, the economy, was the key basis for the subjugation of African people. And therefore, he was concerned with trying to correct that particular direction. He was concerned with the question of taking control of our own destiny.
And when you talk about the drug that was in the community at this particular time, the drug, the main drug was.
Well, the main drug, if you want to try to pin it down to main drug, I don't know exactly what they would have pointed out then doing statistically, but marijuana or weed was flooding the community. Tie stick was coming in. You didn't hear too much about heroin, but you did hear a lot about a skag, which was a cocaine base that would now be similar to, except not as strong as what they refer to as crack cocaine.
Okay. But altogether,
And a lot of speed, a lot of pills. People dropped a lot of pills.
but the situation alarmed Mark, Mark Bethune at the time.
What alarmed him was that the African community kept being more and more flooded with drugs, and it wasn't a question of whether or not it was one drug vis-a-vis another. It was a question that the input of drugs continued to rise during this point. One of the things people are more familiar with at this stage is that there's been the whole congressional hearings around whether or not the particular war that was being carried out in Nicaragua with the support of the Contras, whether or not the particular people who were supporting the Contras was bringing drugs back in this country, which it has been shown that they were. But again, in movies that deal with something like the Black Panthers also show that the African community was constantly being flooded and bombarded with the question of drugs, which the mafia, as well as the U.S. government, was saturating our community with. And Mark was just a person who was very concerned with that, who felt that in order to allow African people not to be high 24 hours a day, it was important that he, as well as other sincere brothers, take on the responsibility of trying to close down the dope houses that were the outlets for these drugs.
Now, in his activities when he got to Wayne, what were some of the kind of things that he got involved
Well, what happened is, again, he graduated from Central. Well, not necessarily graduated. He ended up getting his GED. He went to Central High School, and he got into a program because during that time they was offering a lot of scholarships for the people right after the rebellion. So he ended up getting into Wayne State. And once he got into Wayne State, he tried to get involved with the various African groups there and various projects that had took place, without naming the particular names of the various projects because I don't remember offhand the number and the names of the programs.
there? Later, he came to the Black Panther Party. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, what happened is some of these things were all concurrent, running at the same time. Mark had joined the Black Panther Party when we were still going up at Central because we was working with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And at a certain point, the two of the groups, the Black Panthers and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, decided to join forces. And when they emerged, that's when we became a part of both organizations. And what they did is certain people out of the Black Panther Party, out of SNCC, they sent to the Black Panther Party for orientation. Now later on, what happened is that myself and Mark and and John Henderson were put out of the Black Panther Party because the individuals that were organized and in the leadership of the Black Panther Party in this particular area were too advanced for our sort of militant thinking, and we were sort of too militant for them, and we were put out because of that. We wanted to continue to wear the black hats and the barrettes and the leather jackets, and we were just too militant. Why these particular individuals that we were working with was some of the people who initiated Up From and Drum was the League of Revolutionary Workers, and they were already into studying the deep materials in regards to the Marxist material, the Hegel's, the Maoism, and they had a more advanced understanding of the protracted struggle that